Hey everyone, welcome in today's video. I'm Jennifer from Gen W Arts, and in today's video I'm going to show you how you can draw a realistic white subject by using good contrast and some crazy unexpected colors, all nice and bright. So yeah, stay tuned and enjoy. Hello and welcome in today's video, where I will show you how you can create a realistic white animal with color pencils on white paper by using bold contrasts and luminous bold colors. For this piece I am using the Faber-Castell Polychromos and Caran Luminance colored pencils on white Fabriano hot press watercolor paper. Before I start coloring, I transfer my sketch, which I made on cheap printer paper, onto my high quality paper, in this case the Fabriano HP cotton. You can skip that step and start sketching on your higher quality paper right away, but I prefer to do the sketch on cheap paper so I can make mistakes and erase as much as I want and transfer the sketch I am happy with onto the expensive paper, so it looks clean and doesn't damage the expensive paper because of all the erasing. With some papers you have no other choice than to trace your sketch for a clean result, because they won't allow for erasing, such as the pastel matte papers and the Velour papers. As usual, I start by coloring the background first. This gives me a better idea what tonal values I should use for the subject, and it makes it easier for me to make the subject fit in its surroundings instead of it looking out of place or even pasted on to the background. Since I am drawing a nearly white pelican, this species is supposed to be a tad pinkish, I believe, I chose to do a very dark brownish background to make the bird pop because of the stark contrast. I am using various of brown colors such as sepia, Venetian red and ochres, and use a dark indigo blue in between layers to get a nearly kind of black color in the end. But because of the browns, the background still has that warm reddish undertone, despite that the color is turning so dark. A perfect background for all the bright, luminous colors that I plan to use on the pelican. I use Zest-it solvent in the first few layers of the background to blend the colors together and to get the pigments into the tooth of the paper, so there won't be any tiny bits of white, but just a solid dark color. Moving on to the pelican, I start by blocking in all the different colors in a very light layer on the pelican's neck, using blues and yellows and browns, and adding a very light layer of where the darkest shadows will be, and then blend these first layers out with a bit of Zest-it solvent. When using solvent, it works best not to have your brush soaked in solvent. Usually I dab my brush on a piece of kitchen paper until it's just damp, and then blend the colors on the paper with that damp brush. This way it dries faster, so you can start working on your next layer sooner without damaging your paper. Then I apply the first light layers of color on the head in the same fashion. When moving on to the eye, I start by blocking in the darkest area first, because along with the beak and part of the neck, it will be one of the darkest areas of the drawing. On the beak, which will be the center of the drawing, I also start by blocking in the darkest shadows with a Venetian red, on which a layer of dark indigo follows. I map out every single detail that falls in the shadows this way. I wanted the beak to be the darkest and most vivid part of the bird, as it is a very important element of the composition, forming a kind of diagonal line between the dark background and the very light bird. I keep building the darkest shadows by layering a bit of black in between the sepia layers. Then, when I feel the shadows are dark enough, I start adding the first layers of the brighter colors, with yellow and blue, as this is another way of getting contrast, by just using cool and warmer colors. With the Luminance pencils, I add the final layers of yellow, oranges and blue to get the strongest vibrancy in the beak. When the beak is done, I move on to the brightest part of the bird, its body plumage. This is the part that catches most of the light and will be the trickiest to do, as it is easily perceived as just white. But no white animal is just white, just like no animal is just black. Like black, white is very reflective and easily reflects colors from its surroundings. If you ever spot a white swan standing in grass, you will notice there will be a lot of green reflected on its plumage. And often on a sunny day, shadows that are cast on its plumage are bluish. So when drawing a white or very light animal or object, it is key to pay attention to the colors of its surroundings and how strong or weak the light is in the moment you are trying to capture. With the body, I start out as well by blocking in the darkest areas, but I'm using lighter colors this time, as not every shadow on its plumage is as stark as, let's say, on its neck. So I use a lot of yellows and oranges for the first layers instead, and add darker colors where they are needed in additional layers. Because of the brownish background and because I want a kind of summer sunset feel to the drawing, I choose to use a lot of orange hues for the shadows on the bird. The shadows cast by the beak and the ones that are on the side of the bird's head and neck had a more cooler tone, so I used blues and purple on those parts which at the same time add to the contrast and the realism of the white bird. With the cooler shadows, I start with a light lavenderish color and block in the entire area with an even color, with a very light pressure on the paper. Then I draw in the details with the same pencil, but with a bit more pressure this time, so I have all the feathers in this area mapped out. This does not have to be precise, as long as it looks close enough to feel realistic. With tedious details as drawing each individual feather, it works best to think of them as shapes. Sometimes it helps to put your work and reference upside down in this case. This way you will force your brain to think in almost abstract shapes, instead of what you think you must draw. The last couple of layers I like to use the Luminance pencils to burnish in the final colors to get real bright and at some places almost luminous colors. This is because the pencils are so loaded with pigment and almost have a kind of buttery laydown in those final layers. Then finally I add the brightest highlights in with the brush and pencil titanium white and touch up mixture, adding some finer feathers on the edges of the neck and body and some additional highlights on the body's plumage. So we are at the end of the video. I hope it was helpful, but if you have any questions at all, feel free to ask me in the comment section or on any of the other social media platforms I'm using. I'm always happy to help. Please hit the subscribe button and bell icon if you don't want to miss out on any of my future videos. And as always, thank you for watching and hopefully see you in the next one.